We'll call the Finance Committee meeting to order for Wednesday, March 19th. Any public comment? Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion to approve the minutes from the February 19th, 2025 Finance Committee meeting as presented.
Second. All in favor? 2-0. Item number 2, fiscal year property and liability insurance renewal. Mr. Burrows, and welcome, Mr. McGinty.
Yes, sir. So I will let Mr. McGinty speak of the specifics here, but this is a suite of coverage packages here with multiple carriers that is updated around this time every year. The two main pieces here are the property insurance and the liability package, which includes auto liability. We saw a pretty significant jump in the liability package, almost a 20% increase, which was mostly offset by a reduction in the property package, 4% reduction. Total cost increase this year is $9,154 for a total premium for these 6 lines of coverage of $724,386. There is a summary sheet in the back that includes the different coverages and limits that we have, as well as a detailed proposal provided by Mr. McGinty that includes the automobile schedules, property schedules, things of that nature. And if you have any specific questions about the insurance, Mr. McGinty is here to provide that information to you.
All right.
Ready for the motion?
Yes, sure.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I'll move the Finance Committee recommend that the full commission approve insurance renewal rates for each coverage category and insurer as listed in the attached 2025 property liability insurance premium summary.
And I'll second the motion. My questions, Mr. McGinty, are kind of around on the automobile schedule. The comp and the collision deductibles. There's items on here that show a value of $700, $800, $900, and we have a deductible of $1,000. Do we need comprehensive? Should we look at comprehensive coverage? Should we have a cutoff? If it's a $10,000 item, should we drop comprehensive? Should we? And also with, I don't know, is it 80, 90? I know there's some trailers in here, but I know we're well over 75 or 80 vehicles. Andrew and I were discussing this. We do our best not to make a claim because of what it does to our rates next year. Do we look at maybe a $2,500 deductible on some of the lower end items like we have on the back cons, and just a way to, try and drive since we're driving down cost with minimal claims, we maybe an opportunity to drive down costs with higher deductibles. And based on where we are and having to do an extension this year, this may be something for next year. But something I think we should consider.
Those are good questions, very good questions. First of all, the trailers, there's no charge for trailers on a liability policy. They're covered by the vehicle they're attached to, but then we put them on the schedule just to be sure we know they're there. I can go back to the insurance company and ask them to revise their quote to delete physical damage coverage on items below a certain value. I look for some guidance from y'all on what that value is, maybe $20,000, maybe $30,000. And we can also ask them to increase the deductible to $2,500 each, which is probably the best compromise between assumption of risk and premium savings. Going higher than that doesn't do much as far as reducing the schedule like this.
And maybe having that revised quote, sharing it with Andrew and the finance team, we can make a decision on if it reduces it enough.
Right. I may not have it in time for the commission tomorrow, but I could get in, and you could do that later in the premium. The policy doesn't renew till April 1.
Okay, perfect.
Get it before then, or we could do it even pro rata, so like 11 months credit. And the deductibles are $2,500 on the larger vehicles.
2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. 2,500. Those were my initial questions. Commissioner Cook?
No, I don't. I'm pleased to see the work that's gone into this, and that we've minimized the rate increases. So I think it was you reached a good compromise with everyone here.
Yeah, it was very encouraging not to see property insurance jump wildly this
Yeah,
year.
Absolutely. So
23 and 23 was the worst year.
Yeah.
I've been in the business almost 50 years. I've never seen anything on the insurance. 24 was a little better, but things
Motion and a second. All in favor? Motion carried 2-0.
And Mr. McGinty, you'll be joining us tomorrow as well? Okay. So he'll be here if there's questions from the full commission tomorrow about the package.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Item number 3 is a contract award for Lost Exit 29 WPF and EST Division 2.
All right, so we bid this out in January as 3 separate divisions. If you recall, we awarded Division 1, which is the well site, Division 3, which is the distribution network. Division 2, we did not receive any bids. Division 2 is for the elevated storage tank. We received no bids for Division 2, and at that point we had accepted bids on 3 different styles of tank, and we got feedback that from both sides of the tank world, those that like to build the composite tanks didn't want to bid against other tanks because they do have a higher upfront cost with a lower life cycle cost. And then some of the lower upfront costs did not submit bids because they did not want to waste their time if we wanted a composite tank anyway. So we resubmitted the bids for advertisement with just the composite tank, and we were able to receive 2 bids for this work. Bids were received March the 6th. The low bid is from Landmark Structures at $7,767,000. This is a 500,000 gallon elevated storage tank. Our engineer of record, Thompson Hutton, provided an estimated cost of $9.6 million, so they were pleased to see it come in under their estimated cost. This would, if awarded tomorrow, commit the bulk of the remaining Tier 1 SPLOST funds. We were awarded $13 million in Tier 1 SPLOST funding and $2 million in Tier 2 SPLOST funding. If this is awarded, there will be $361,000 of uncommitted Tier 1 SPLOST funding for future work. Like I said, the Tier 2 is not guaranteed, but does look like, based off of collections to date, that those should be coming in as expected. And so staff recommends awarding this contract to Landmark Structures for the construction. You do have a letter from our engineer of record recommending the bid, and the bid tab is attached as well. You will note there is in red on the Caldwell bid on the bid tab. They made a mathematical error in their bids that was adjusted on the bid tab. However, it did not impact who was the low bid on the contract.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission award a contract to Landmark Structures LLC in the amount of $7,767,000 for Division 2 of the Exit 29 Water Production Facility and Elevated Storage Tank Project.
I'll second that motion. Was there any conversation in your meeting today about this?
There was some discussion. It showed the site location where we're at Exit 29. There's a lot of clearing work that has to be done. So, good discussion. They were in support.
And this tank will be very visible from I-95, is that correct?
Yes, it'll be visible both in the north and southbound travel lanes of I-95.
Do you have any competing bids for what's going to be on the tank?
No, sir. Right now, there's been no interest expressed. The city is interested, but it is in the county. So typically, we have not crossed the boundaries there. But our logo will be on at least one side of the tank. We always want to put our logo as portions of the tank, but perhaps the county or the development authority or the city or the chamber, somebody may want it on the south side of the tank.
As long as it's not an Amazon's signals, logo on there.
Yeah, we have abstained from having corporate logos up there just because of those corporations change locations frequently, and we don't have to paint the tank again.
I do have a question. Is there a lot of steel in this tank like this?
There's concrete bottom. Let me pull up a photo just to let y'all know there won't be a higher tank, obviously. The composite tanks are concrete shafts up to a steel top. So there's less steel than what you would have in some other style tanks.
Right.
But there are there is some amount of steel, and that is one of the, we had some discussion with the contractor, and that is one of the things that was discussed at the facilities committee earlier today was the potential impacts of tariffs on steel prices. Mm-hmm. What now? Where did I miss it? We gotta have some photos on here somewhere. Yeah, so it is steel on the top. You can kind of see concrete up. You see the concrete here. So like the I-95 tank that we have, concrete over here at the bottom, and then this part is steel. You have different style tanks. You have what's called a multi-leg tank, like we have at Prince Street or out at Kate Road now. There'll be steel tank at the top with legs all the way down and a steel shaft that runs here in the center. And then you have, like we have at the mall tank, which is a pedosphere tank, which is a steel tank and a bowl at the top that's all steel. Very similar. They have these on Jekyll. They're painted as golf balls on Jekyll. You may be looking at that golf ball on a tee, which is very much what it looks like.
And how much is the capacity of this?
This is a 500,000 gallon tank.
500,000 gallons, right? Okay. So we definitely need that stuff. So you were talking about the impact of tariffs on steel prices.
They're having to protect themselves against potential price increases, and of course, awarding the contract and getting them under contract helps.
I was going to say that's definitely.
There's some abeyance there of of risk getting them under contract. So,
do we have the ability to, like, for instance, in a bid, request that it's steel from the United States as opposed to Canada steel?
Yes, depending on the type of funding, it is actually required sometimes for that to be the case. If you use federal funding at all, so SRF funding, FEMA funding, ARPA funding, anything like that, you're required to meet Build American, Buy American, Build American, BABA standards. And so for like the project we got currently ongoing at Academy Creek, that's ARPA funded. That's all BABA compliant. Valves, all the metals and everything has to be Build American, Buy American, Build American. They should do it the other way. It makes more sense to me. But this does not require that. So they could source elsewhere if they so choose.
Right. Well, that's up to the company to make the decision.
Up to the company to make the decision. And, you know, in a competitive bidding environment, if they can buy locally and not have to pay those increased tariffs, that may make their bid more competitive. So.
Right. Rather than passing the cost along to us.
Exactly.
Plus 25% of the steel.
Exactly. So.
And I get the concept of Buy American, but I imagine there's going to be increased demand significantly of American steel when people start paying a 25% surcharge and other things.
Now this is a pretty good in-progress shot here of the concrete tank and then building the steel up.
500,000 gallons.
500,000 gallons. This is a 2 million gallon tank, so height is similar, but a 2 million gallon tank is pretty good size.
I won't even ask you how much it weighs in there. And as a general rule with that, what level of capacity do we keep in there on a regular?
Typically, at least the bottom third is full at all times. We have an operating range based off the pressures in the system, so we are typically operate between 60 psi and 50 psi. So typically, at least the bottom third is always full.
Because I know the water can't sit in there for too long.
Can't sit in there. You get turnover. Try to turn it over multiple times a day, and then also, of course, having
primarily at night.
Fills all throughout the day.
All throughout
the day. Now, if we get more tanks online, you could look at filling in the middle of the night and draining during the day. If you have surface water treatment where you have one major power source, it sometimes makes economic sense from a power consumption to get on real-time pricing on your power and fill that at night. We have so many different power accounts, we can't take advantage of that.
I was talking to someone the other day, and they said, well, why do you need a water tower? I said, well, it's very easy. All you have to do is fill a 5-gallon bucket with water and pick it up, and you'll know why you need it there. You want that pressing down on the system and creating a lot of pressure.
Well, absolutely. It 100% levels out the pressure instead of being counted on fluctuations and pumping. Having water in the air levels the pressure out. See, much lower swings in pressure with tanks.
Thank you, I appreciate you.
And it also improves fire protection because you have additional water in the air to help with fire protection.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I don't have any more questions.
All right, motion and a second. Motion carries 2-0. Item 4 is the item 3 contract award for the construction phase services. Mr. Burrows.
Yes, sir. This when we did the engineering contract for this, we asked for a percentage of construction cost proposal for the construction phase services, which is contract administration, submittal review, RFIs, and site inspection services and record drawings. And so at the time Thomas & Hutton was selected, they submitted a 3% cost proposal for these services, but it was to be one contract. Since this was split up into 3 separate contracts with 3 separate contractors, they have requested an adjustment to 3.8%. 3.8% of the construction cost. This is assuming that the landmark contract that we just discussed is awarded tomorrow. The combined contract amount is $12.8 million, so the 3.8% of that is $487,000, $487,350. And they're also requesting $6,258 for rebidding Division 2 and some permitting fees that were not included in the original proposal. So the total cost for the construction phase services and the small increase in the original service fees is $493,608. This would completely exhaust the Tier 1 SPLOST funding and commit $131,666 of the Tier 2 SPLOST funding, leaving us with a little over $1.8 million in Tier 2 SPLOST funding for additional SPLOST projects for neighborhood extensions. This was discussed at the Facilities Committee as well. There was some discussion around the additional services required with the 3 contracts, and that this contract requires 40 hours of field observation during the duration of construction.
All 3 projects?
Of all 3 projects. Well, not 40 hours total between the 3 projects, 40 hours a week. But if the projects are on different timelines, so they will be here for the duration of all 3 projects. But we won't have 120 hours of observation if all 3 are happening simultaneously.
Ready for the motion?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend awarding a contract to Thomas & Hutton in the amount of $493,608 for construction services for the Exit 29 water production facility and elevated storage tank project.
And length of contract's about 2 years on between the 3 contracts. The longest one I believe is 20 or 24 months. So this will be with us for a while. Yes, sir.
On the bid, there's item E5 is special inspections allowance. And both contractors had $150,000 in there for that.
Mm-hmm.
What is that special inspections allowance as opposed to what we're paying the engineer?
This is the materials testing, all the stuff we talked about. You were asking about the additional inspections that would be included. All of that's being paid for by the contractor. So concrete services, concrete testing, all that stuff that they.
So if they don't spend all that, they don't get paid that.
That's correct, yes, sir. That's just per the cost associated, but to avoid that being the reason somebody did or did not get the bid, we put an allowance in there for that. So items E1 on the previous section, items E1 through E5 are as needed, not committed.
I have a question on the, when we get the bill in for the services for this, I see that we have all the consulting rate fees. Do they break all that down for hours?
No, sir, not on this. This is, these construction phase services are lump sum. Additional work would be at the rate.
Okay.
So it's typically lump sum percentage of construction, so.
I think we probably make that better that way.
Potentially, we'll see.
We keep on with them.
We'll see.
Keep looking.
But yes, now they cannot bill in advance of the completed construction. So if the contractor's only billed for 20%, they can't bill for 40%. So they actually are a little behind schedule on billing on the front end and then make it up on the back end. Because, of course, they do a lot of submittal reviews on the front end.
Item 5 is a contract award for Academy Creek sludge dryer repairs. Mr. Burrows.
Yes, so we run a Fenton sludge dryer at Academy Creek to take pressed sludge off of a belt filter press and then dry it. Off the belt filter press is about 15 to 18% solids, depending on which of the 3 plants it comes from. And once it goes through the dryer, we can get it to 90 to 95% solids. We actually get above that, but it starts not being cost effective to continue to run it above that. Currently, we dispose of it in a wet landfill in Folkestone, and there's also a landfill in Screven. Is that where Broadhurst is? In Screven that we take it to as well. We're limited at the landfill sites for what we can take at pressed sludge and not dried sludge per quarter. And that's also impacted by rainfall according to their landfill permits. We have been doing an extensive amount of solids handling improvements at Academy Creek and running a drastic amount more solids through the dryer. And when you utilize assets in ways they haven't previously utilized, things show up. And so the dryer is not currently functional because we need to do some bearing replacements and some new swivels and sprockets for the dryer to return to working condition. Fenton is no longer in business, and so you cannot get parts from Fenton. AIT Services is owned and operated by one of the original designers and fabricators of the Fenton dryer, and so he still has the plans to manufacture the parts as necessary. And he also provides labor to replace the parts. And so the cost for all the rehab necessary is $147,200.68. I will indicate that you see in the paragraph above $139,000. The $147,000 includes an $8,000 expediting charge to cut about 4 weeks off of the production time. But given the amount of sludge that are going through Academy Creek, rehab pays back itself in 2 months with not having to haul as much sludge away. So we did talk at the facilities committee meeting about potentially beginning design on adding a second dryer, because dryers are nonstop maintenance needs, and while they're down, we're paying substantially more to get rid of sludge. But you're looking at about $5 million probably to put in a new dryer and a couple of years minimum. So getting this back online in the next 8 weeks or so is a good use of funds for the time being with a 2-month payback. This will be funded out of the operations budget.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Finance Committee recommend a contract award in the amount of $147,200.68 to AIT Services, Inc. for the rehab of the Academy Creek sludge dryer. Also known as, what's her name? Dryer?
Oh, Sarah.
Sarah, that's right. AKA Sarah. Oh, obviously, yeah.
Very few of the things we do have a 2-month payback on them.
Is it feasible in the long term to think about purchasing a second one? Or no?
Yes, I think it does make a lot of sense, so that you could basically alternate some schedule, maybe monthly, and then go in and do maintenance as necessary while it's running. Because anytime you heat something up like a dryer, the longer you can keep it running without having to cool it off and reheat it, it's more efficient. And things like to run, not start and stop.
I don't think we're going to be decreasing the amount.
There will not be any decrease in the amount of sludge. I can assure you of that.
That might be a good SPLOST project for next year.
Well, we're looking at it. We're going to potentially look at some engineering costs to try to see what design would look like on that and get a better number on what that would cost. Long term, having a second dryer provides a tremendous amount of flexibility. And at Academy Creek, we have a offloading facility where we can take sludge from the other 2 facilities and run it through the dryer. So having that ability to run that facility nonstop would benefit us long term.
The other facility in the future will have that built.
It won't have a dryer, but
have the ability to transport it out.
It'll have ability to transport out. Yes, sir.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Motion carries 2-0. Item 6 is the USGS joint funding agreement.
Yes, sir. For several years, we have been entering into a joint funding agreement with the U.S. Geological Survey to monitor groundwater in the upper Florida aquifer to determine the saltwater intrusion and the migration of chlorides throughout the aquifer. This is very key for long-term planning for the existing wells, and also as growth continues to understand how that plume is being shifted relative to our existing wells. We have had to close the Perry Park well several years ago. None of our other wells have been impacted, although the Brunswick Villa well is very near the plume location. Obviously, with Pine Nova closing, we have seen some shifting of the plume. It appears to be concentrating a little bit closer to the Brunswick Cellulose property, given the withdrawal rates that they have. but this is a key contract for us. This is funded out of the Office of the Director's Operations budget. You got a 10-year snapshot of what we have spent in the past on this. They're requesting, due to increased in costs to provide the services to USGS, $10,000 increase in the total contract amount. They're increasing their allotment $5,000, and we're increasing our allotment $5,000 as well. So this is an $85,000 joint funding agreement with the U.S. Geological Survey, and this we do have sufficient funds in the Office of the Director budget to cover these items. And there is the actual written agreement, and then in the back there's a lot of descriptive information about the project. And if ever the board wishes for the USGS to come down and give a presentation on the results, Mr. Cherry would love to come down and speak to you about the results. This is real-time monitoring. You can go online, pull up the data on the well sites, and see what the chloride levels are. Estimate.
Keep the monitoring going on all the time?
24/7, and then we take additional samples that they take additional samples throughout the year, but they do a specific conductance real-time sample that's got a linear relationship with the chlorides, and so the conductance information's up there. I think it's updated every 24 or 48 hours.
I guess they got a lot of SCADA.
Well, they run it, they have their own little setups off of our system, but yeah, we could certainly, USGS does a lot of really good work, and so this is critical for us. Because certainly if we have a small red zone, but saltwater intrusion is a major issue in coastal Georgia, and we like to make sure that ours is staying where it's supposed to. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's well sites on Camden and in McIntosh. There's some on Jekyll, St. Simons. Yeah, so there's a lot of different sites they do this. We're not the only contributor to this. Jekyll Island also has a small portion of this, and I think some of the other counties have a small portion of this as well.
You say Mr. Cherry would be glad to come and give us.
He would be thrilled with the opportunity, sir.
Seems like it's his baby here.
It certainly is. And he actually typically at least one of the annual conferences statewide, he gives an update on this every year in the groundwater section. So if you ever do go to those conferences at the groundwater tract, you can probably take advantage of that information there as well if you'd like to.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend the full commission enter into a joint funding agreement with USGS in the amount of $85,000 for the continuation of groundwater monitoring in the Upper Florida and
Motion carries 2-0. Fiscal year organizational budget.
Yes, sir. As part of our standard practice at the March Finance Committee meeting, I present the budget request, draft budget request to the Finance Committee and accept your feedback and recommendations, and then bring this back to you at the April meeting for approval. Now, we do have the line item budget that we can go through if you so choose. However, I have got a PowerPoint summary here, and it's also in your packet about a 20-page report that has a lot more information, but a lot of the figures in the report are here on your packet. So every year when we go into the budget, we have typically maintained 3 goals, and these are always goals that we try to keep in mind. As we know, we talked about tariffs earlier. Affordability is essential to maintain to our customer base. Everybody's having to pay more money for everything, and we're having to pay more money, so we want to maintain affordability despite our costs rising. And we also, our project costs are continually going up, and so we need to work to increase our project funding to help offset those rising construction costs so that we don't slow down the rate of improvements we're making in our system. And then the only way to do those first 2 items is to do number 3, which is improve our operational efficiencies. So some highlights. At this point, there is no rate adjustment being requested. Despite not having a rate adjustment requested, we are able to fund an increase in the repair and replacement reserve, which is where we do the bulk of our projects from. And that last item we'll go through a little bit more in detail. We have reorganized our wastewater systems. We combined the systems pumping and maintenance and the wastewater treatment divisions together into one wastewater division. We have an expected retirement in the water divisions at the end of June, and so beginning next fiscal year, we'll be combining those water divisions as well similarly. So the budget items are being combined, so it looks a little different in the budget thing. But still the same information, it's just which bucket it's falling under. So top line dollar value, our current fiscal year budget total is $38,930,000. The requested budget for next year is $39,830,000, and that is a 2.32% requested budget increase. However, as I pointed out, the budget increase is not being funded by any rate changes. This is through account growth that is generating the increase. So revenues, where do they come from? 40% of our revenue comes from sewer revenues, and I will also say leak adjustments offset sewer revenues in our budget. So 40% from sewer revenues, 21% from water revenues, 18% from our admin and base charges, 12% from debt service charges, and then 5% from other income, which is a kind of a catch-all for a bunch of different items, the different fees that we have, which is late fees, service fees, septic hauling fees, things of that nature. And then interest income on our investment accounts is about 2.5%. And then planning and construction does charge fees. It's about $40,000 a year. So they get a unrecognizable slice of the pie here at 0.1% of the budget.
Question on the septic hauling fees, have those been fixed for a while?
Those have been fixed for a while. And that's one of the things we have discussed, potentially, if we were going to do anything, adjusting those. It's about a $150,000 line item in the budget, $175,000 line item in the budget. Currently, they pay a $15 hookup charge and then 8 cents a gallon past that. But certainly that could be looked at.
Our costs for
Have went up significantly,
yeah,
yes, sir.
so I think that may be something that's
Certainly, we could take a look at that.
take a look at.
As I mentioned, customer growth remains strong. I've got a chart on the next page that'll show you that. Again, our revenue increases from usage and those sewer and water revenues are account-driven increases. They're not due to rate increases. And then as we finalize the sale of the Board of Elections next door, there is no rental income in next year's budget. So, talked about account growth. You can see there that has continually went up. You have the year-by-year percentage increase in customer accounts. At the bottom, you've got the actual totals. But over the last 5 years, we've seen an 8.76% increase in water customers and a 7.8% increase in sewer customers. The bulk of that additional increase in water versus sewer is irrigation accounts that have come online. So we're running monthly average for this fiscal year is 30,797 water accounts and 25,944 sewer accounts. If you go by Mr. Klein's office, there's a picture in his office that I believe was from July or August of 2017 that said we had 26,000 accounts. So in the last 8 years, we've added over 4,000 accounts. So significant growth. Now this chart kind of shows you a little bit of where we're at in relation to some similar size and similar location utilities. This is at our average residential customer uses around 4,200 gallons. And so I've got some people near us, Statesboro, Kingsland, Jekyll, St. Mary's, and then Savannah, JEA, Satilla Regional at the bottom, that's Waycross, if you're not familiar. And then we've got some other similar size utilities, Columbia County, they're a little bit bigger than us, Augusta's a little bit bigger than us. And then we've also got St. Augustine and Charleston and other similar coastal counties here. For 4,200 gallons, this is based off of available rates on their website, so if I miscalculated by not understanding their rate fees, I apologize.
They didn't update their website.
So the average is $67.83 for 4,200 gallons. We come in at $64.31, so we're just below average on that. We'll say you can look, we have some systems that are down around the $40 mark and some that are over $100 a month for 4,200 gallons. So it's kind of where you allocate those funds and how you collect that revenue. So how do we collect that revenue? We have 4 major sources: sewer revenues, water revenues, debt service, and admin fees. And you can kind of see how those have grown over the years. You'll notice that the sewer revenues, the one before last column is projected through the end of February for the rest of the year, and then versus budgeted. So the revenues are essentially budgeted as flat compared to where we're expected to come in at in most areas. The one thing that you will see a slight decrease in is in debt service charges because as Pinova continues their closeout process, we expect those debt service charges to fall off going into next year's budget. On the expense side, in big round figures, about a little over a third goes to operating expenses. 32% goes to personnel. This year, 26% is being placed into reserve funding for projects, and then 5% for debt service actual principal and 2% for interest, so about 7% for debt service. So between, if you consider debt service project funding and then project reserve transfers, about a third of our budget goes to projects, about a third goes to personnel, and about a third goes to operating in round figures. We are seeing some slight increases in bad debt expense due to aging accounts, but that's a very small percentage of our budget, and the governing body makes up for 0.53% of next year's budget, so y'all need to get your spending under control.
Can I ask you a question about the personnel?
Yes.
How many open positions do we have at this process?
As of last payroll, we had 15 open positions.
Okay. And when you fund those positions, are they funded at a percentage for the year, or?
Yeah, it depends on the position. Positions that have high turnover, we typically fund those that are vacant at 50%. Those that are a little more stable, we'll fund those depending on how long it takes to fill those at either 75 or 100%. So speaking of personnel, next year's budget has a total staff count of 152, which is a reduction of 2 budgeted positions from this year's, and that is due to the wastewater combination that occurred. So we were able to combine, eliminate 2 positions, gain some efficiencies there. The budget does include a 2.3% cost of living adjustment and the potential for merit raises above that, up to a combined 5% total. We're not budgeting 5% for raises for everybody, but that you could get to that through the performance appraisal process. And that cost of living adjustment is based off the most recent updated CPI for cities in the South with a population of less than 2.5 million. So
So the employees all will get the automatic 2.3
on July 1st, yes, sir.
July 1st, and then at their
Appraisal.
annual appraisal time,
Yes.
it can jump it up to 5 total or 5%.
5 total percent. So that if you get a 4 out of 5 overall in your appraisal, you get a 1-step raise, which would be 1.35% additional. And then if you got a 5 out of 5, which is very hard to get, you would get a additional 1.35% for a combined total of 5% potential raises for employees next year. And then I did mention we combined the SP&M and wastewater treatment accounts into wastewater, and we combine the water production and water distribution accounts into water. So
I do have another question. I think I fell asleep. I was reading material in bed on the line by line. When you mentioned that one of the people is retiring in June, how much leave time are they allowed to accumulate? Is there a limit to that?
You're able to roll over 160 hours per year of annual leave, not sick leave. You can accrue as much as you would like. If an employee has more than 160 hours of annual leave at the end of the year, and they have taken at least 80 hours off during the year, anything over 160 will convert to sick leave. And sick leave can be used to purchase additional years of retirement. So you cannot use it to retire early. So you can't say, I've got to get to 25 years, so I'm going to buy my last 2 years out. But if you get to 25 years, you can potentially retire with 27 years of service by using your sick leave. You do not get paid out for sick leave if you leave our employment, but vacation you do get paid out for. And so
You can convert the sick leave over to
retirement years.
retirement. Okay,
Yes.
that's fair because I was wondering because the actual vacation leave we pay out on the retirement.
That's correct.
And that's at the current rate.
That is correct. That's at their current rate. And most is 100. You can be at more than 160 because you can convert over 160 on January 1st. So it's whatever your accrual amount is up to that point.
Is that a line item, or is that included in the? Is there a specific line item for payouts like that, or is that just?
We have accrued vacation
Okay, yeah.
out in the balance sheet. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I was just I couldn't. I think I might have fallen asleep before I got to that part. So.
Yeah, there certainly that it can be.
It
could be a substantial payout.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely, depending on the person. Yeah.
We update the accrual calculation for that at the end of each year. That's part of our audit process as well.
Now, do they have the option if they're over 160 at the end of the year can they get paid out for that?
That is not currently an option. We've looked at that, and there are some staff members that have requested the ability not to get anything over 160, but to maybe be able to sell 40 hours back a year. We're looking into the potential tax implications of that for staff members. One of the commissioners brought up that he was of the understanding that if it was possible to sell it back, that everybody would have that liability and not just those that would be taking advantage of that program. We certainly don't want increasing tax liability for people that are not taking advantage of that program.
You know, I think when I worked for a city, I think the theory was that if they didn't give it back to the one sick beyond that, if they didn't pay you the money, if you had 180, they would end up paying you when you retired at a much higher rate than you were rating there if you're planning on staying.
No, and some of our folks just don't take time off. You know, some people are just not time off, but sometimes people in certain positions, it can be challenging to take time off because of, you know, different staffing situations.
When I retired, they paid me for my sick leave and my annual leave, and it was a pretty substantial amount of money because I hardly took any time off.
Yeah, we do. Now, sick leave, we have people with over 2,000 hours of sick leave, so that can be used for retirement, obviously, but
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
well, in my previous employer, you could roll over 480 hours, not 160, and I had two very long-term employees that retired the same month, and you could roll over 480, and then they had stuff on top, so we paid out something like 1,200 hours in 1 month on top of normal wages,
Right. Yeah.
and that was noticeable in the budget.
Yeah. Sure.
That was noticeable that month.
One more question. Do you have a program now, like if you have an employee that's out on illness or extended leave, do employees have the ability to donate
Yes.
some of their time?
It has to be approved. The employee must request donated leave through their superintendent, who has to sign off. Then it comes to either me or Miss LaDonna to sign off on as well. In most situations, that request for the request to request donated leave is approved. Now, if somebody, if there is some belief that they have been abusing their leave, then perhaps that might not be granted. But in most situations, it is granted.
Yeah.
And typically, staff members are very generous with their time when it comes to
all
that.
that happened too, where I worked. It was particularly depending on the circumstances.
So, you know, we do it frequently for expecting mothers to help cover their
Nice.
maternity leave. People are very generous in that regard, or if somebody has a chronic illness type situation. We've had a few people take advantage of that, and it's been successful. And like I said, people are typically very, very willing to be generous with their sick leave with that
We
situation.
don't pay people for family medical leave except with
Their own time. That's right. And
The cost of living and the merit process the same as last year?
yes. There was some confusion, and we've been doing this for several years, so the fact that there's confusion is confusing. Simply because of the way the merit process works, if your anniversary date is July 15th, you get a cost of living raise on July 1st, and potentially, depending on your scores, you may get a merit increase on July 15th versus somebody whose anniversary date is June 15th. You have to wait a whole year to get that merit increase. And so people may not have fully understood that process, but in general, the process is decently well received. It does give people extra incentive to pay attention to their appraisal and what is being stated in their appraisals, which is helpful. But also, because potential merit increases are included, it puts additional pressure on our supervisors to get their appraisals done timely, because it could be impacting somebody's ability to get a raise as well. So, in general, I think it is well received. Yes, sir.
Have we ever had a discussion about a common review date?
We have. What ends up happening, we do quarterly reviews for our probationary employees. And so in some of our divisions that have significantly more employees than others, doing them all, it would end up happening where we'd have quarterly reviews and annual reviews due in the same month, and it would be a substantial workload that month. So this spreads it out very well across the year. But that's certainly something we could take a look at, just historically has been done with the anniversary date. And I mean, I can't speak to everyone in the room, but I think everyone's pretty used to the process at this point. We have changed our appraisal process in recent years, and it's much more well, in my opinion, of course I designed it, so I think it's this way. In my opinion, it's much more user-friendly and provides them a lot more information about how they got their scores. So it's very transparent to them of how that came about. So which divisions do we spend the operating expense in? Well, if we're going to generate bulk of our revenues through sewer revenues, then we should probably spend most of our money in the wastewater division, which is what happens. We spend about half of our expenses in wastewater, about 16% in water, 13% in finance, but I will note finance includes all of the health insurance charges for the entire organization. They don't, you take that out of their budget, they're a much smaller percentage of the budget. Admin is 7.5%, which includes meter reading, IT, customer service, and those associated items. Planning and construction or engineering is 6.5%. Purchasing is at 4%, and purchasing also includes all of the landscape contracts for all of our facilities and electricity, natural gas, all of the utilities for this building. So the bulk of theirs is not necessarily things that you would traditionally lump in purchasing. That's just where it has fallen. And then the office of the director makes up 3% of the budget, and governing body 0.8%. And then industrial pretreatment, it is an EPD requirement that they have a separate budget. There are no personnel items charged to that, so it's a very small budget, but that is a 0.12% of the budget. But that is an EPD requirement to keep that separate. So where are the budget increasing at? A little over $1 million increase in the R&R transfer. That is because we are seeing increasing project costs as a result of the current economic environment. Our banking and investment fee line item is going up $185,000, which may catch you off guard. However, I will point out, if you recall, when we changed banks to Synovus, they gave us an introductory period of fees that were waived. So
Honeymoon's over.
the honeymoon is over and they want their money now. No, but that has been a successful banking relationship thus far, I would say. So certainly needed to account for that. And then machinery and equipment, the items that fall under that $143,000 increase, trucks and equipment and things like that are being more expensive. As things get a little long in the tooth, they need replacement, so they're seeing an increase there. So where are we decreasing at? Interest expense. As you pay off amortized loans, you pay more of your principal, less of the interest, so about $300,000 less in interest. If you recall, in October, we paid off the VATCON lease, so that $290,000 is no longer in the budget. And then with the installation of UV equipment, there is a drastic reduction in the cost of chlorine and sulfur dioxide because we won't be using it, hopefully, very much into the next fiscal year. We did budget a some amount in case there's some delays in getting that equipment online, but a reduction of $177,000 in chlorine and sulfur dioxide at Academy Creek. One thing to note, in your written packet, there is a list of the capital items that are included in the budget. Those would be brought to you for approval as they come up. There is a line item in there for wastewater that is not, we've not formally identified which items will be replaced with the reorg. They're still going through that process, but we'll have that before the April meeting, that detailed list. There is a budgetary amount in there for all of wastewater for their capital items, and they are actively working on that list right now. Like I said, do have you can pull up the copies of the actual report that has all of the 20 goals for the year based off of our core values. And then we do have the line item budget, so we can answer any questions you might have, or certainly we'll take any feedback. We'll say thanks to Ms. LaDonna, Dave, and Ms. Francis, who's not here, who helped put together this budget process for us. It is a several week process to get through the budgetary procedures, particularly when I decide to change all our accounts in the middle of the budgeting process.
Are we expecting a decrease in oxygen costs? Is that for next year?
The decrease in oxygen, we kept it flat this year. We are seeing a reduction, but we're still trying to get that tuned in. So rather than showing a massive drop right now, we want to get that further fine-tuned. So next year we'll hopefully see that, but we also got a notice of increase of the rate of the per ton cost of oxygen the other day. So we kept it flat.
What was the project that's reducing that cost?
That's the DO probes that we bought last month, so we can get the in and out and fine-tune that a little bit better. We have seen on a monthly basis, we've seen a reduction of probably $30,000 the last 2 months, but we haven't had a lot of rain or flow increases or anything, so we want to make sure that's going to trend in that direction before we adjust the budget downward.
I have a question for Dave. On our overnight interest rate on the overnight stuff with the bank, is that changing also?
It's been pretty flat the last couple of months, and of course today the Fed announced that they're holding rates steady as well.
Right.
So we're not anticipating much change in the overnight cash rates.
They changed the dot plot at all? I was reading something about a dot plot. I don't know. It's all in the range. All I know is it's going red.
The increase in fees are just standard fees that we've been paying for a bank anyway.
Standard fees per account charges, different
Yeah.
transaction charges. They just waived a bunch of them at the
They
first
just
year.
shamelessly lured us in
Yeah.
last year. And we're glad to have it, but
And of course, that under this agreement, we're getting interest on our overnight accounts, which we weren't previously with Truist, and that's helping.
oh, yeah.
So the fees that we're seeing are, net effect is lower than if we had just stayed where we were.
So Synovus is off probation now.
Now, I will note, the last page in your actual packet has some numbers in here, and it's got an estimated year end that is drastically higher than the requested budget. Keep in mind that we did a $2.2 million surplus expense for pension and for capital lease payoff. And the way that projection works on the estimated year end includes we're going to expend that next year, so that is why that is the way it is.
When is when's the pension report? Is it October?
The new pension report will come in typically in May, but it will be for September of '24. We made the
Right.
payment in October,
I know.
so you won't see it till the next year's pension report.
Right, but you could take that money off there. So.
Right.
And I think it looks like it's probably been fairly favorable.
Yeah, it has been, yes, sir.
Until recently.
No. Well, Dave moved all the files, and I got to find them again. Something about being more efficient, and now I have no idea where anything is anymore. I'll get there. I was going to pull up the actual line items in case there was questions about that. Come on, we can go line item by line item. What you got?
I'll be asleep by the halfway through.
So what was it you said about nodding off?
Right, yeah, I was laying in bed reading.
Well, that ain't right.
So, I was I woke up a couple hours later, it was.
Andrew, we had a conversation last year on the line items for the budget around legal expenses, and I think we had a $100,000 a month or $50,000 a month last year, and it was just in case. Where do we stand on that line item for this year?
Okay, let me pull up the actual. Where am I at? Year to date, on the financial reports, you'll look here. Of course, it's not on there. All right, let me get there. What month is this? February? I know it's not February, but it's the February reports. All right. So year to date on those line items, we are at standard legal fees. We budgeted $75,000 for the year, and we spent $33,000 through the end of February. I think the invoice that we just got is probably another $14,000, so we'll be pretty close on that. We do have a separate item for legal fees for litigation, which we have spent no money on year to date. In next year's budget, instead of $25,000, I have included a $75,000 figure in there for that. Mr. Dormany is supposed to be getting me an estimate on what the potential litigation fees are that can be refined as we go into the April request for approval. But understanding the potential litigation we have facing us, that will be an increased expense, which is why the governing body's budget request has increased. So directionally, that is where I see us for the next year. Certainly, any feedback you have copies of the line item budget, anything like that. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to sit down with you in between now and next month. And then, if all goes well, we'll present for approval at the April meeting. We will post for public notice the proposed rates for next year in May, and then we will hold town hall meetings in June. Usually it's the first or second week of June, depending on it's a Tuesday, Wednesday. And then we will bring at the June meeting the official rate resolution for next fiscal year for your review and approval. So the rate resolution has a bunch of those smaller fees. Some of those may be adjusted, but the bulk of the rates that the overwhelming majority of customers have to face are not requested to change for next year. Which information?
Like the budget and stuff, when it's finalized?
The budget, the information in your
Yeah,
I
know
today
it
is
is,
available
yeah,
now, but certainly the budget is put on there with the monthly financial reports and everything like that. So,
I mean, next month after we,
right, it'll be on there. Yes, sir.
it's certainly good news for our customers that there's going to be no rate increase. Certainly, all you have to do is go to the grocery store and understand the pressures, so.
Just don't buy eggs; they'll go back down.
They're going down in 2 weeks, according to.
Allegedly.
No, that's what they said, 2 weeks. The wholesale price is down,
Okay.
but the retailers bought the eggs more than 2 weeks ago, so.
It's just like the gas prices. They go up really fast and then they trickle down real slow.
That's something good.
So certainly, if you do have any feedback at a later date, just let us know, and we will adjust as necessary so that hopefully we can have a smooth process at the April meeting.
I want to thank all of you, the team that did the work on that, because it's a nice job. You found your way through the requests and denying the requests.
Yeah, that we did not have to replace the batteries in the no button this year, which is good.
Okay.
You know, I've been reviewing the budget now for 6 years, and so the superintendents have gotten better at asking for things that they have a chance of getting. So the most of the no button comes out in the capital request because people put everything they want, understanding that it's not feasible to get all of that. We did reject a couple of requests for capital items that may be coming at a later date to add new equipment that may allow us to do different kinds of work, but just in this year's budget, it did not make a lot of sense to move forward with. All right. Thank y'all.
Good afternoon. Let's see, we have the financial results for the month end February 28th, 2025. Page 1, for starting off on the balance sheet, current assets coming in at cash and cash equivalents, $2.1 million. That's a decrease of about $200,000 from last month. Accounts receivable net of bad debt is at almost $2.4 million, which is a $183,000 increase over last month. Still at a normal level that we've been seeing for quite a few months now. Those were the biggest changes to current assets. Total current assets coming in at $10,725,000 for the month. So it's a net change of almost $201,000 increase in current assets. Restricted cash accounts. The biggest change that happened there was on the very first item, JWSC reserves, currently at $41.4 million. That decreased a little over $1.7 million because of a draw that we made out of our R&R investment account to pay for R&R projects that we've been going mostly, I believe, related to Canal Road. It's been one of the biggest ones that we've seen pay-ups coming in for on that. Let's see, capital reserves increased or decreased $158,000 to $14.238 million. And see, the SPLOST account, of course, saw a normal increase of about $330,000 for this month. So total effect on total restricted cash was a decrease of $1.56 million, bringing our restricted cash to a total of 71.5 million.
This loss of money is coming in at above the originally projected amounts?
Indeed, indeed. I believe the original projections were like 260, 280,000 a month, so we've...
Running up around over 300?
Right. Yeah, it's definitely been, you know, a happy check each month. Let's see. Construction in progress was our big change in capital assets. We saw a 3.8 million increase to construction in process, bringing that to 38.124 million. Let's see, putting our total capital assets at 197,499,000 as of month end, which total assets, which is all of the above we just talked about, 281,942,000. Under current liabilities, we saw an increase in accounts payable going from 2.2 to 2.35 million, which was a $144,000 increase, basically a normal monthly fluctuation. The other big increase in current liabilities came in retainage payable, which increased about 212,000 to an amount of 1.246 million for this month. Interest payable is up to 430,000 for the month. Total current liabilities currently at 10,973,000. Long-term debt holding steady at 62,300 and almost 5,000. Other liabilities, customer deposits payable, minor decrease there as we paid out some customer refunds. That is at 3.055 million. Total liabilities coming in at 79,608,000 for the month of February, which is a net total increase of 347,000 since prior month. Skipping down to page 3, which is our revenue summary. Currently, total operating revenues as of February 28th, 2025 is at 28,510,000, which is 2.557 million over budget. We'll note that the change from last month in interest income is about 363,000. 185,000 of that was fair market value adjustment on our investment portfolio. And on the next to the last item for operating revenues, which is other income, currently we're showing a change of almost $545,000 for that month. For this month, putting that at a total of 1.886 million in other income for the month. That is, there's an error in that calculation. We received the check for our tower rentals. We have an agreement with an intermediary, and we basically lease space on the top of some of our elevated storage tanks to cellular providers, and they put antennas up there. That results in about somewhere in the neighborhood of $330,000 a year in revenue for the commission. We received the check on an annual basis. That check was received and booked to the tower rental account instead of the tower rental receivable account, because we accrue the monthly fee that is acquired each month. So that will come off next month. We found that error 2 days ago after these reports had been printed, so we apologize for that, but not too big of an impact. Let's see.
Their journal entry.
Yep. It's a simple reclass that will put that in the right place. When we look at expenses, our expenses broken down by governing body, personnel, operating, and capital. It's easy to see that personnel and operating expenses are the largest in that total bucket of 21.4 million. Of course, has been mentioned in the past, about $1.25 million of personnel costs are related to the pension funding that we approved back in, I believe it was October, November timeframe. And operating expenses, of course, running about normal for the month, a bit high, of course, but we'll look at that in more detail on the next page, showing total net operating revenue of $7.1 million at the moment, which is $1,079,000 over budget. But like I said, with that $1.25 million that we paid in the funding for the pensions, we're essentially running flat against budget year to date. Bad debt expense, Mr. Burrows mentioned earlier, currently showing $420,000 as a bad debt expense. We have seen uptick in bad debt over the last couple of years, but this number is inflated due to large invoices that we have out against damages that were caused to our system when fiber cable was being installed throughout Glynn County. Those invoices are over 120 days old, which is our largest category for estimation of bad debt. As you know, we don't expect any more large projects coming through that would generate those kind of large invoices, so that in our budget plans next year, the estimation for bad debt expense is at a more normal level, which would be closer to $200,000.
On those outstanding debts on the fiber project, is that, have we been collecting some money?
Nope.
No? I mean, I know when they were doing it in my neighborhood, I was outstanding guard over my sprinkler system, but that's minor compared to what's happened here, so.
Indeed,
yeah.
It's definitely a source of frustration for us internally.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, we should be getting free fiber optic, at least. I know you can't comment on that.
Yeah, we've certainly made efforts to communicate with.
Remember that adjustment to the the governing body budget?
I got you.
Yeah.
Right. I do have a question on the personnel expenses. Is there a possibility we'll be getting any reimbursement for the overtime for Helene?
Oh, yes, that was going to be something that I was going to mention.
I'm sorry, I jumped ahead of you.
No. In fact, I just had a conversation with FEMA yesterday. We put in for a reimbursement. There was a great deal of confusion on what the deadlines were to basically get your initial request in. Ours was a bit late, but they gave us approval to submit a request. Now we're in the process. I met with them yesterday for the initial exploratory phone call. A representative from FEMA will actually be here on site next week on Thursday the 27th, and that will be for what they call a recovery and scoping meeting.
Are you the host for that?
Yes. We'll be talking about...
What day is that? I'm going to be sick.
Thursday.
We'll be discussing basically what are the items that we're seeking reimbursement for, and they'll also be educating me on the process of what I need to fill out, what support we need to submit through the grants portal online to get that reimbursement. What I've seen so far with regard to Hurricane Helene, we had about $88,000 worth of payroll expenses, overtime premium pay for the employees who were basically working around the clock that weekend to keep the water flowing. And then we had almost $200,000 in invoices, generator rentals and materials and parts, other expenses, items needed that weekend to keep our system humming. And those so that's probably getting us close to $300,000 that we would be stating as expenses seeking reimbursement for. I'm not 100% sure. I think the normal process is to get some percentage of that back, or if approved, of course. But it would be a nice chunk.
It is not a quick process.
Yeah,
No,
true.
I know that.
Likely will not hit in this year's budgetary cycle.
No, but the thing is, as long as you get
Right.
your bets in on the table there, at least you got a good chance at getting some reimbursement, unless they cut the personnel in FEMA, who knows? So,
I believe when I think they paid out the FEMA reimbursement for Katrina in like 2013. Yeah.
Or
it's
last
a long process, I understand. So that's like money in the bank, though, if you get it back.
We need to double check. We may still have a little bit that we're waiting on from
We are.
Irma.
Yeah, we are still waiting for like one check from Irma, $90,000 or something.
There has of course been shakeups at FEMA. The person that we used to deal with is no longer there. We've got new contacts, and so far so good. Time will tell how effective that relationship is. But at the moment, I'm going to
You
be.
could woo them.
I'll be cautiously optimistic for the moment.
Drive them around in our best vehicle when you take them to places.
Well,
Maybe the worst, maybe the worst one. Maybe that's
yeah,
probably.
don't want to be too flashy. But page 4, the revenue summary breaks down our expenses by division, and we can see the largest areas of expense: systems, pumping, and maintenance. However, at 5.5 million. However, that is where our VATCON payoff was logged in at. Wastewater treatment, of course, being the department with the highest expenses, of course, sees the high costs of oxygen, chlorine, other chemicals, repairs and maintenance costs, equipment rentals, etc. So that's what's contributing to the budget overages that we see there. Total net operating expenses at 21.4. Net operating revenue, 7.1 million. Page 5, we get into our details of our cash and investments. Our primary deposit account, the revenue deposit account, is at 1.834 million at the end of February. That's a $631,000 decrease. But it's got that 1.8 million balance because of the drawdown that we did from our R&R investment to pay off those repair and replacement project costs that we've seen. The general checking, which I believe was noted a negative balance last month due to the timing issue that we had at the end of the month, that has cleared itself up and normalized, so we're currently showing $170,000 in the checking account at month end, bringing those cash and cash equivalent balances to 2.13 million at the end of February. Bond sinking fund, that increased to $246,000 to a 2.338 million. In our elective reserves, as I mentioned earlier, the biggest change was the 1.8 million drawdown on the repair and replacement reserve. So our elective reserves are now at 41.4 million versus 43.18 million last month. Continuing down that report, see bond trustee reserves. That is at 6.62 million, only a $22,000 increase there, which is essentially interest that has occurred on that fund. The legally restricted reserves, the biggest change was the check for SPLOST, 330,000, bringing us to 23.4 million in our legally restricted reserves, bringing total cash and investments to 75.98 million at the end of the month. The next page is our
That's the overnight cash, and that's the total down there, 16,589,000?
yeah.
That's well, yeah, for the month, yeah.
Month end, yeah.
And then is that interest rate, does that fluctuate with the,
It's still over 4%.
still is? Yes. Thank you, Federal Reserve, for holding the rates today. Appreciate that.
Yes, indeed. The investment summary, as you'll see, the total investment account itself is at $50,428,000, which is a decrease from the $52 million we saw last month, once again due to the repair and replacement reserve drawdown. The account is currently yielding 4.13 against market value, which is very good compared to where we started when I first showed up. As you can see, the total net loss of the portfolio is currently at 110,000. Our most recent investments, which are maturing in 2028, you can see consistently are showing a gain over the cost that we've paid for those. The bond market has been favorable to us this year.
This is very impressive, this list, because so many of them are up in the high percentages here. What it was before is amazing. Nice job on that.
And last but not least is our project report. The most significant change since last month was that we have basically recorded encumbrances for purchase orders on the SPLOST Exit 29 account. So that project shows a total cost through the end of this year increase of about $5 million, which is consistent with the approvals that we saw on that project for the Division 1 and Division 3 phases last month. And that is our financial presentation for February. Sure.
I have a question for you. On the 3 projects going on, Exit 29, which one are you going to, they're working on the water production facility already?
We've had the
Or are they getting
pre-construction
ready
meeting, but we haven't started. They'll probably get out there early May. Yeah, the pre-con was Thursday.
What about all the new pipes? Is that also going to be in conjunction with that? Or
They'll all be happening simultaneously.
Okay, that's what, okay.
Okay, so we're trying to schedule the pre-con for the new pipes. That'll probably be next week or week after. And then obviously, depending on shortest one, and then depending on the outcome tomorrow of the contract award for the tank, we'll probably schedule pre-con for that probably end of April, if I had to guess, by the time we go through contracts and everything. Yeah. Community road, yeah, we got to get some of the bonds, waiting on for that. And then I mentioned at the facilities meeting, we had the pre-bid, not the pre-con, the pre-bid for the FEMA fixed generator installation project yesterday. So those bids are due back April the 2nd.
I want to tell you, I had a friend in town recently, and I took her around and showed her some of the facilities and things. We finished the tour, and she sat there and she looked at me and she said, well, this is an enormous responsibility. And I said, yes, it is. There's no question about it, and essential. So I think when someone, older woman that has not thought about that so much, but when she started looking at all the facilities and things, it was interesting what she realized that, that it's quite an operation going on. So kudos to everyone here.
We have a lot of irons in the fire at any given
Well,
point.
you're not kidding. A lot of construction going on. Very impressive. So.
Yes, sir.